and welcome to the World Agricultural Community Project Dialogue Series. We have decided to begin a conversation on a topic, an issue that's pretty prevalent within communities of color, and that topic is colorism. Some people want to talk about it, but can't. Some people don't want to talk about it and have. Many people still don't believe that it's even a thing. But the facts remain that it has been something that has affected a lot of people, has impacted lives, has impacted self-esteem, and so forth. So the way to begin healing, we feel, is to talk about it, but not just amongst ourselves, but others who have experienced it, who have been impacted by it, whose lives are affected by it. So we decided to start within our own tribe, the World Agricultural Community Project team. And, we began that conversation. So we invite you to kind of, just chime in and see how we addressed it to start with. Share your thoughts below. Let us know how has colorism affected your life? What are your thoughts on it and so forth? And we will definitely be continuing this conversation. But in the meantime, let's start with this simple question.
Yes, it definitely does exist, at least in my world, from my view, past, present, and hopefully by having these kinds of discussions, we can do something about it to change it. So I have been impacted, and one of the ways by which I have been impacted, as you can see, I am of a lighter hue, and just very straightforward. And yes, I have, if you want to use the word benefit, I don't particularly care for it, but I have benefited from the complexion of my skin because of the outer society and what it has done to cause or to put into practice the divisiveness that among those of us who are lighter skin and darker skin, and what that does to us from an emotional and mental standpoint, and also from a economic standpoint. So there's numerous ways in which we have been impacted. Just to read, and sure you all may know this, what is colorism? It says colorism is the social marginalization and systemic oppression of people with darker skin tones and the privileging of people with lighter skin tones. And I have seen it in my lifetime, and I see what it's done to us, as a people and as a society.
Well, I straddle both sides of the fence with that because I come from the same background as Mama Karen does, and as a therapist, right? And perception is something that is real in society. And I know for myself, I am of the doctor's hue, right? So I was teased in school coming up, but I had a strong support system that buffered me from the could be more damaging emotional effects of colorism. And because of the temperament and the type of person I am, I feel energy, right? And so if I personally don't feel a type of vibe or energy coming from a person, place, or thing or organization, I personally would probably, move myself to another place, and I'll process it later and be like, wow, and look at the stats and be like, wow, everybody there is white, or everybody there is a light color. Oh, wow, maybe that's why I felt that. So I might not know colorism is happening when it's happening, but I'll process it later and might be able to label it. But if I don't label it as colorism, that doesn't mean that I didn't feel a shift or a difference or a change from what I was hoping for, right? But in my personal life, we create our own personal delusions to keep us safe, right? So if I were to say that colorism doesn't exist, it would be so that I don't harp on the negative possible effects of said thing. But the reality is that that job, that person, that situation could have that perspective, absolutely. And I've had over the years more emotional impact than anything else, but those things emotionally could lead to something more like a relationship issue, financial issue. So it could cascade into other things, but I can agree that yes, I have been impacted, but I had a support system to help curb what could have been disastrous.
Mhm. Gotcha. Julia or Chantal, how can you can you share something? Can you add to that? Do you think, have you seen where colorism has played a part in your different environments, socially or through education, professionally?
Yes, colorism does exist. From my perspective, being African, being dark skinned, I've also encountered several situations where my skin color was referred to as ugly in some aspects, as pretty in others. But yeah, it's a big deal where we come from because, as you all know, a lot of the African men and women do bleach their skin to get a lighter complexion, which is looked at supposedly as a better, look.
Yeah.
I've always chose not to go that route because I am proud of who I am. I am proud of my skin color, and I'm one of those that educates about being proud of who you are and how you were created and loving yourself as you are. So if not for skin conditions and maybe prescribed medication to, help fix the problem, I'm against bleaching. I'm against, all these products that's out there being used. But also, we know that the different complexion also contribute in how we are treated socially. Some job aspects where if you're lighter, you get the job versus someone who's darker. So yes, it's a big issue, like Miss Karen said, that has exists today, and hopefully, with this type of conversations, we can um, get to a point where we can put a stop to it and just have people learn to accept themselves for who they are rather than what they are.
Julie, what were you going to share?
My experience growing up in the Gambia is slightly different. One thing I've noticed is that many Gambians are proud of their dark skin, or we appreciate the beauty in dark skin, but also a huge percentage of Gambians are also bleaching their skin. And then this another reason for that is because lighter skin is seen as more beautiful, more intelligent, wealthy, upper class. But at the end of the day, we still appreciate and see the beauty in dark skin. I guess it's a bit complex, but normally when I go out and stuff like that, I've never felt insecure with my skin complexion, even though I'm darker skinned. And when I go to get my hair done, buy clothing or whatever, they would normally tell me something like, I want something that's going to make your skin complexion glow. We want to see your dark skin glowing, stuff like that. And, it makes me feel good about myself. And I've also seen like many dark skinned people in our media, and then people praise them, appreciate them, and love them. So sometimes I wonder why, or what is the reason for this skin bleaching and stuff like that. But then I can also see the root and the reason for it. And I wish we didn't have to do that at all.
Yes, totally agree with that. And I'm glad you mentioned that. As far as Chantal, I'm glad you mentioned about the bleaching. And Julia, that you've mentioned that it exists in Gambia, which makes me sad. I hate to hear that. I was watching a video about how popular it's becoming even in Jamaica and, in the islands down there in the Caribbean. And these women are so serious about it. They're so serious about it. And they're making up these crazy chemically based concoctions, including one who was using the bleaching bleaching stuff that's used for hair when you're about to use a lighter color on darker hair. She's using that and mixing that with some other type of skin bleaching cream. So, I mean, people are harming themselves to try to make this change in themselves that's not supposed to be. Otherwise, they would be that in the first place. Why? Where is this coming from? In your opinions, we know it's very deeply rooted. We know that this is something that has a long history. But I just want to hear from you as far as your perceptions and your understandings of where does this type of, and I'll say it's an insecurity come from. I remember myself, and I'll just share this and then ask you all to respond to it. But I remember, when I was growing up, and you see, I'm like kind of right in the middle of the brown spectrum. But when I was growing up, I thought I was dark by the way that I was treated by, those in my social circles. And I remember looking at, I was a product called Ambi, and looking at that and wondering, can I use some of that to make myself lighter? So why do you think, or where do you think it comes from, this mindset that, especially women, I don't know about it being so much with men, but mainly women, that we feel we have to change what's on the outside to that extreme, that we've got to lighten ourselves up for what? And where does it come from?
Colorism is rooted in colonization, and we can see it in both formal and informal settings. We can see it within our families, within our communities, in terms of how one may be, how one may be even described. I remember growing up, the terms that were used towards someone who was a darker complexion would be talked about in ways that I think were harming. And I think that that has been supported and reinforced by the larger society. And all we have to do is look around at the imaging in our culture. I mean, on television, up until recently, we're seeing more and more Black and brown individuals, but we typically don't see that. And if we do see someone on television on the wide screen, that person has been someone of a lighter complexion. I've seen that throughout time. And I know that in my generation, I heard it, some folks, well, she's passing. She was lighter skinned, so light skinned that person could pass. And it was a way for them to find some acceptance and maybe economic viability, which at the bottom of all of this is what's created out of this and what's generated out of this is not only divisiveness that plays into economic disparity for those who are of a darker hue. So I've seen it played out. Now, it is complex. To discuss it is complex. It's not so simple, but I believe it's rooted in history, and I believe it is rooted in colonization and how we have been conditioned to believe and think about someone who is of a darker hue. It's in our language. She has, what can we say? Well, you remember the saying, some of you may have heard it. I remember hearing it. White is right, brown stick around, yellow is mellow, and black get back. I've heard that said in families. If we think about it, we may not always track when it's happening, because sometimes I think it's not always so easy to recognize, because we've all been in some ways a part of that system that perpetuates it, whether we admit it or not. So yeah, it's it's a deeper discussion that wounds us on a psychic level that we're not always aware of how it's wounding, but we see the results of it in mental health. It was in my family. You know, we had a darker skin side of the family, and we had a lighter skin side of the family. And the lighter skin side of the family considered themselves to be better. Let's not get into talk about hair texture and all those kinds of things.
Whole other conversation. You're right about that.
Yeah. Mhm.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, even just talking about how it's present in households and families. And I mean, it's crazy that this inner discrimination that a lot of people have suffered from because they were darker than the other siblings or you know, this group of cousins or whatever it is. And that treatment is hurtful, you know. So how many people around the world, you know, within just different nationalities and whatnot have suffered with that. And you know, how do we get past that? Because it is very damaging. It's very damaging.
First of all, I was like, Karen, are you living my life? Because everything that you said that happened in your family, like a lighter side or a darker side, I had the same thing, literally split right down the middle with my family. And I would agree with her sentiments that it's being based in colonization, but I would also say for the younger generation who might not even be in, who might not have been or taught that, you know, its roots are understanding systemic racism, and they just want to be accepted. They, in moments like that, they feel like they don't have control, but the only thing they have control of is their body and their image. So if I can change what I look like, maybe I'll be accepted, because assimilating to the mainstream culture has been something that we have been as a culture trying to do. But now I think that the tide is shifting to where we're realizing that we don't have to assimilate to be amazing. We could be separate and just as great, right? Or making sure that we are unapologetically knowing who we are and stating our value when we walk into a situation, no matter what the demographic may be.
Mhm.
But I, along with what Karen said, I would say that it's one of those basic needs, like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You know, acceptance is one of them, and belonging. And I see it in adults, but especially in children. They will go to any length, you know, to not be outcast.
Julia, one thing you said, I really loved and appreciated, and I've heard this anyway, you know, when you go to the continent, that, you know, our Blackness is seen differently, of course. You know, it's not where we go from feeling and being treated like minorities to being part of the majority. So, you know, the treatment is different. So what is it that you think is changing with people, with women especially, that suddenly being a part of that great majority is now causing them to want to go to the other side? They want to fit in to where they're no longer, I guess, showing and representing their genetic ethnicity as much. What do you think has happened or is happening that's changing that and influencing women to turn toward the bleaching and whatnot?
Okay, like you said, in Gambia, of course, or in Africa, we are the majority. And then I can step outside and meet like a dozen or 100 people that look just like me or have the same complexion as me. So obviously we're not a minority. And then I think it's the main reason why we appreciate our skin complexion. But then when we look at the media also, normally Africans or Black people are portrayed as uneducated, poor, and stuff like that. And then white people are shown living wealthy lives, more educated. And normally that's the impression people have. When they meet white people of lighter skin, they assume that they are wealthier or they are more educated than someone who is of darker skin. And then normally they'll even be shocked to find out, I don't know, I think people would be shocked to find someone who is lighter skin as uneducated. something like that. Yes.
That's interesting. That's interesting because it is this perception that people have that lighter means brighter. You know, lighter means and then, you know, even like when I was growing up, lighter complexions, people automatically saw them as being more attractive, but that's not necessarily so. And I that was kind of proven to me when one of my friends had this very fair complexion boyfriend and he was just ugly. So I'm like, lighter does not make you, you know, necessarily automatically better looking, because then I started to see, and I think maybe he kind of opened my eyes up a little bit too, because then I started realizing that light did not mean that you were just the cream of the crop, the top of everything, because he was not much at all on many levels. But then I, you know, started to have more appreciation for darker complexioned males in particular. You know, I started to, you know, back when in the days of the Silvers, you know, I don't know, that's a group from the 70s, and they were like really, really nice looking, beautiful family, and they're all lighter complexion and had all this hair and everything. And so going from the Silvers and the Barge looking individuals who the lighter complexion and the softer hair textures and everything to favoring darker complexions, I started to love chocolate. And you know, I'm like, let me go toward the other side that's not so popular. And I started to see a beauty there that it was sad that it is being ignored. There was no reason for it. And, you know, just really kind of recognizing the biases that we had for this group more than that group, and that group is ignored, but it shouldn't even have been that way. But I'm sorry, I might have gotten a little sidetracked there. That kind of brought back a lot of memories. But it's just really, it's interesting when we say that it's a deep-rooted thing. A deep-rooted thing, you know, socially, like Karen mentioned also about the names and the titles and the labels that we give each other. You know, in my neighborhood, we definitely did that. You know, I had a friend who was very dark brown complexioned, and she was labeled Black, you know, Black, whatever her name was. Then we had a girl on the other side who was she was Puerto Rican and Black, so she was lighter complexion and had the wavy hair and all of that, and she was referred to as pretty so and so. You know, so we did that to each other. We definitely did that to each other. I've seen it in my family as well. Let's see. How can we begin to encourage each other to heal and to give more recognition to brown being something that is beautiful and is worthy of being admired and respected? By the way, have you all seen the British Vogue cover for February? Is it February or March? I think it's February. Have you all seen that?
Yeah, I think I have. It's beautiful.
Absolutely. Although there's people are a little upset that they dressed them all in black with this dark brown background, which I kind of see that as being in a way it's a little bit distracting, and I think they could have put them in color, you know, put some pretty colors in them or change the background or something so that their melanin popped more. But these women are absolutely stunning. I mean, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful shades of ebony and dark chocolate skin, and they're gorgeous.
I think more artists or people that have a platform use opportunities that they have like that to speak through their art. Not necessarily, I was just wanted to be, it's going to be beautiful, but I think the unapologetically blackity black all the way through from the beginning to the end of the cover might have been some of the motivations to do it like that. But when I saw it, I was like, well, that artist is saying something. That's what came to my mind.
what do we need to do? We need to remember that whether here in America, Africa, Europe, Asia, we all come in different shades. We should focus on encouraging our children, especially the future generation, to just accept themselves for who they are, love themselves for who they are. Um, Miss Karen knows pretty much my family, but she was just grew up and stuff. My late brother, he had published some poetry and short stories, and my mother came up with a title for his book, You Need to See Through Me.
Mm,
So
mm,
that's about accepting people for who they are, not what they
Mhm.
are. So we have to teach acceptance. We have to teach our kids that you are beautiful just the way you are. We have to teach them to love themselves, to accept themselves, pretty much. That's my point of view.
well, I think there's a lot of things we can do. As Chantal has said, we do need to teach our children, and we need to be a voice when and if we hear and see things that are perpetuating colorism. If you have questions, or if you notice something, talk about it, bring it up. Don't be afraid to. I think a lot of what has happened to us is that we fear dealing with this issue of racism and colorism, which is a part of racism, and how racism continues to be played out. I think we can use our voices. I think we can talk about it in our families. I think we can listen to when someone says something, and try to educate as best we can. I think that we're beginning, I'd like to think that we are beginning to see some change because we're having these discussions. My era, we didn't talk about this kind of stuff.
Right.
We weren't empowered to do that. We were afraid to talk about it.
Mhm.
The other thing, I guess, though, as a lighter skinned person, fiercely, part of her loves her blackness. I love my blackness. I love my black me. So,
All right now.
Yes, you do. I can attest to that.
All right now.
so
Mhm.
that has never been an issue for me. But because it hasn't been an issue for me, doesn't mean that it's not an issue for our larger society and the world, because it is an issue.
All right.
But that when we're together, we recognize, the differences in our youth, that we are able to, be present with each other. Because I feel that sometimes if I walk into a room, rightly so, or if I'm in a large group of people, that I might be held in suspicion because of my skin color. I'm going to be aligned with, white people, or white supremacy, or the ways in which white supremacy is carried out, that I'm held in suspect. I get that. I understand that.
Mm.
But how can we recognize that? Because these issues that we're talking about impact us on a deep, subtle levels that we don't understand from a mental brain standpoint, and how they're played out. That's why it's worked so well.
Wow.
Keep right on going as if there's no elephant in the middle of the room. So we need to have a sit down meeting with each other. We need to have a family meeting. That's why I'm glad we're having this, a family meeting with each other, and talk about these things, begin to recognize where they are and where they live, or how they're played out in each of us, in terms of how we see each other, how the words that we choose to use to describe each other, and maybe some of the unspoken that's there that keeps us distant from each other.
Mm.
Just saying,
Mm.
just that.
That was heavy all in itself right there.
Yeah.
Wow.
But we're
Yeah.
hurting. All of us are hurting. Humankind is hurting. Even white folks are hurting. may not fully understand it all because even within white society, we have images that are portrayed that young girls and a lot of our young people are admiring and they want to look like, you know. How does this play a part in all of this? How does this play a part in all of this? Because we're dictated to by mass media that's all about making money and disenfranchising as well. The psychological component of what we're talking about is a whole other different discussion too, and how it plays out from intergenerational trauma and collective trauma throughout our lives. So.
Yeah, and I remember Fatia mentioning that we're not only referring to Black people when it comes to colorism. You have all these white people tanning. You know, they want to look like us. But yet, if you ask them, some of them, why are you tanning? They'll give all these 10,000 reasons. You know, but by the end of the day, your skin is going to look darker. So what's going on inside of them is the question. You know, we're talking about skin, but we'll get to the point where we talk about hairs, like, you know, Miss Karen had mentioned earlier, from kinky hair to fine hair to curly hair. You know, all those things get discriminated against. So these type of conversations will really help us not only to, I guess, find who we are, appreciate who we are, but also educate others. Use this platform to educate others. So this is really the beginning of a great thing. I'm loving it.
Well, we definitely need to continue the conversation. There are so many other angles to approach it from. You cut out a little bit with your the network kind of messed up part of what you were saying at first. So you were saying with white folks who tan, you believe they tan because they are not happy? She froze. Was anybody ever?
That's my
think
point
that-
of view.
Oh, there
Yeah,
she
I
is.
think I heard her.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. just want to clarify what you were saying so we can have it, your whole complete comment there. So you were saying you believe that they tan because they're not happy with their appearance.
Yes.
Okay. I might agree with that too, but then when, like you were saying, when you ask them, they don't really have that answer. Is, you know, all types of other explanation. I had a friend, yeah, she lived to tan. She lived to tan, and one of her comments was, when I lay down on the sun, I'm going to be as dark as you. But do you want to be like me? Do you want to be of my race? No, they won't say that though, right? So it's interesting.
Right.
It's interesting between that and the you know, when, oh God, who was it? I was sent videos, these vintage videos from I think the 30s or 40s of these band animations, these cartoons, and they're the buffoonery of Black people back then with huge lips covering half their face, and they're as dark as patent leather shoes, and it was so disgustingly
Again,
ridiculous.
you know, that leads to people getting Botox. Who is getting Botox?
Right.
It's not
so
us.
That was an issue to point out our fuller lips, but you want them now, right? The picking out of the ridiculing of the Black woman's curvy body, that fullness in the hips. But I see some of you walking around like you got bean bags in your butt now. So it's like all of these, and this is why I don't understand it, you know,
there's so many feature wise, there are things that we are coveted for, but then you've got our own people wanting to rid themselves of these characteristics. That's what's hurtful. That's what confuses
There's a
me.
lot,
What's
there's
so
a lot of
hurtful.
ignorance. There's a lot of ignorance. You know, people just need to be educated. I mean, it's so much to this topic that, oh my God, we can probably take the whole night to talk about it. But yeah, again, you know, education, conversation and education. This will help us understand and go somewhere with it.
I agree with everything that has been said, and I feel as though we are in an age where information is more accessible than it was back then. Back then, you had to be taught, you had to have a conversation and literally sit in front of somebody and talk to them. But now, whether YouTube, you know, whether at a touch of a button, you can actually start the re-education process for a young child or an adult. It doesn't have to come, you know, one-on-one. So continuing to change the narrative and providing that positive propaganda that we see now consistently and support it within ourselves, and not to be a solution is not to be a supporter or inadvertently a progenitor of the type of abuse that we're talking about, like internalized, you know, even though our grandparents and my great grandparents were taught a very different thing that I was taught. So I have to make sure that I'm telling the story and not reliving that transgenerational trauma that Ms. Karen was talking about through my actions. And then I also, just to say, to comment on what you were just saying about, you know, why a white person or someone of a lighter color would choose to be dark. I think that major wedge is capitalism. Capitalism is what has pushed a lot of people to make decisions because they're trying to advance. They're trying to make money. They're trying to be appealing. They're trying to be desired because that might tie to economic benefits. So even back in the day when they, you know, when the Venus Hottentot was put on display, it was a money-making venture. So capitalism and greed, or when I was in school, I'm from Texas. So it wasn't about being light skinned. It wasn't about being white. You know, intellectually, okay, yeah, I guess maybe I really didn't see that. You know, my community was very diverse. There was Asians, there were white people, there were black people, there are all types of people where I came from. But I knew I was black and I knew I was different. But it was about it was about hair. And I know we haven't really gotten there yet, but it was about having that long, straight, flowy hair. And the more you had, the more you were, I guess, favorable. So it has very different, you know, in every place where people grew up, it looks differently. You know, a focus might be on a different part of the body, whether it's a lift, but a person that was of color, whether you were Hispanic, Puerto Rican, Black, or anything, they were considered more exotic. And being exotic is something that you were seeing in popular culture, or the propaganda that was praised. And I don't know, and whether it was tied to money or just being liked or popular in school, that means that you might have a date for the prom when somebody else might not have a date for the prom. So those, it might not always be money or transactional, but within, you know, we might feel a loss. But
what would you tell a sister who was struggling to believe in her own beauty as a melanated woman?
The first thing I would tell you is whether you like it or not, you will not change who you are. You have to accept who you are, because what does it do to you when you're fighting against yourself? You're trying to be something that you are not. You know, no matter how you take it out there, they will look at you for who you are. So it starts with you. It starts within you. You have to accept that this is the way I was created. This is how I'm meant to be, and go from there.
This is true.
Yeah. And we have been told growing up, if you don't love yourself, it will be hard for somebody else to love you.
And that's true.
Yeah. So
And
again,
I-
it's just being encouraging of self-acceptance is the key right now.
and I think we have to get beyond letting others define our beauty
Mhm.
and push us in directions that we're not intended to be in. And, you know, for myself and anyone else, you know, I remember having this heart to heart with myself and just standing in the mirror for hours and just looking at myself and just trying to find something I liked. And I did this, I was about 16, 17. I just, you know, just stood there and just stared at myself and just, I was like, I want to find something I like about myself, because there was nothing. And once I found something, then I'm going to make that look better. I'm going to highlight it. I'm going to highlight it. So that's when I started wearing my little lip gloss. And I didn't used to like my lips. I thought they were too big. And then I said, I'm going to try lipstick. And so finding something, and then, you know, once I started wearing lipstick, then all of a sudden there was some little attention that came with that. But I think it's important for us to learn how to, I guess, to highlight our own beauty, discover it and highlight it ourselves. So whether or not our nose is a certain shape, or our lips are too thin or broad or too full, or maybe our hair is extra coarse, or maybe it's thin, or whatever it is, but try to highlight whatever it is in a way that makes us feel good about it. That's my little nugget. Anybody else before we sign off?
Those were all good. I don't know that I have anything that will add to that. It's, you know, I think it's how we treat each other, you know, how we talk with each other, and how we can be present with each other in order to be able to lift each other up. So having heart to hearts with people and being genuine and sincere, and being open and honest to talk about those things that are sometimes tough, that are not so easy to talk about, that, you know, things like somebody else defining you. So not being reduced by other people's definition of you and what's beauty, what beauty. When you look at a little baby, you know, most of the time we look at a little baby, we're all, you know, the baby's beautiful, you know, because how cute that baby is. We're cooing with the baby, you know, we don't see, you know, an ugly baby. We just see a baby, and we all are, you know, so we're all babies at one time. We're all beautiful. So yeah, I just would try to get
And
them.
we still are beautiful.
And we still are beautiful. We still are. Let's not talk about the aging process, another conversation.
Oh, that's the beauty of it.
Of defining beauty, you know, how
Yeah, that's the beauty of it. You know, it's a privilege to see a new day every day. So
it is.
yeah.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely.
And I just want to say, Julia, you are very beautiful, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Thank you
I
so
love
much.
your dark
So are
skinness.
you.
I feel like I used to be darker, in this cold weather where I live, it's like making me look lighter. Because I was always the darkest of my siblings, and they used to call me Chabusiku, which means darkness, you know?
I'm also the darkest in my family.
Oh, wow.
Yes. So everyone else is lighter, but it hasn't bothered me at all. Thank God, like my parents, although both my parents were light skinned, they always like encouraged me to love myself and appreciate myself.
Wonderful.
And then, yes, that was it.
I love that.
That's good. Yeah, my mother went to, I think, Senegal or the Gambia at one point. She used to take a group of students there. And one time they were in a village where by 8 p.m. they
Yes.
cut the electricity off.
Okay.
So my mother was like, the only thing you could see was the beautiful white teeth and the eyes. 'Cause everything was dark, you know?
Yeah.
And some of the Senegalese, and if you take some of the Sudanese, you know, they're not actually like dark black. It's like a midnight blue. It's just a unique beauty to their skin. And it's like, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
yes, you are beautiful.
Thank you so
It
much. And so are
is.
you.
Thank you.
Aw.
Thank you. We are all beautiful.
Yes, we are.
Yeah, Miss
I feel the
Jacqueline, you
same
too,
way.
girl.
I would feel the same way Chantel does when the winter time comes. I'm like, I
Yeah.
need the sun.
I'm glad I'm not the only one that saw that. So I barely
feel
wear
the same.
makeup now because I'm just trying to keep, my skin out.
Mm.
Oh my God. Yeah. I need to move back south. Yeah.
We would love to have you back down here. I don't know why you up there in the cold anyway.
I know. I told Miss Karen we need a reunion. We need to do some kind of reunion dance, That would be awesome.
We are talking about that.
Mm-hmm.
Sure we can do a whole
Sister of-
weekend, a weekend of dance
Yes.
would be amazing. So we'll have to start working on that.
Mhm. So this
Ladies,
was
thank
a
you.
great evening. Yes.
Thank you so much for stopping in and chatting for a little bit. We will definitely pick this up again and talk some more. I would love for us to be able to engage in this conversation with some of our Indian brothers and sisters, some of our Latino brothers and sisters, whoever else, and just kind of broaden this conversation because it's important. And I think it's the like Karen was saying, the elephant is always in the room, is that unspoken something, but it has affected most people in some sort of way, either personally or they have participated in it. So I thank you all, and we will be in touch. We'll be talking soon.